right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of God Built This podcast. I'm your host, Maxine, and we're on episode 73. Today, I'm joined with a colleague of mine, Mora. Mora's in the house. Welcome.
Hey, what's up?
Hey. Okay, so has a disclaimer. This is our first Zoom recording. Mora is a guest here on my podcast. This is his first time. And we're just going to rock it out virtually and just enjoy our conversation. So there's a lot to unpack with what's going on here in this world, in our own community, in our society. And one of the things that has come to my attention is that there is a new white slur. Now, apparently, hillbilly is not enough, or cracker is not enough. But Karen is the latest white slur here in the great states, the United States of America. Karen is a white slur. Now, when I think about Karen, I think about how is Karen considered a white slur when it's usually Becky? Like, oh, you got a Becky on your arm. But Karen is now a white slur. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, I think it's funny to mention that. First off, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate this. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I'm excited for what's about to happen. But yeah, I think this is a great way to kick it off. I mean, can white people try and find any more ways to feel as if they're being offended or targeted? I mean, I think they're going to try. And this is the latest instance of it. You know, like, Karen, really, that's what we're going with? You're going to be insulted by being called Karen? No thanks. Next. You know, it's like, no, we don't have time for that. There are too many important things that are happening, and the latest one isn't you being called Karen. Like, please spare me the antics. I understand you feel as if you're being oppressed, but you don't know what oppression is. So Karen isn't oppressive. It will never be oppressive. I think there's going to be people that will continue to name their children Karen. I mean, I've even considered it, right? When I'm thinking about what I'll name my kids Karen. I'm kidding. I haven't. I'm not going to name my kids Karen. Not because it's a slur. I'll tell you that. It's just I'm not going to name my kids Karen. But you know what? I'm not even gonna say that because I don't know, right? I haven't met my wife yet. Maybe she wants us to name our daughter Karen. And ultimately, if that's the case, we're not gonna sit and have a conversation around, well, isn't that like closely related to this white slur? Like, that's not something that's gonna happen. Like, yeah, nice try, but no.
And I think it's just, there is so many dramatic white people in this world that I just can't keep up. Like, at what point do they think to themselves, let me stop being dramatic. Let me stop calling the cops for no good reason. Let me stop having a problem and feeling unsafe for no reason because this Black person decided to walk or get on the same elevator as me. Like, we have bigger things to fry. You know, we have this whole virus out here that apparently, I just found out this morning that the US military said, oh, they knew about it since November, or they had like news about it since November. They gave their minor warnings, but still the administration, Donald Trump, still didn't give it any light, any importance. So now we got to add on Karen being this, oh, let's be more sensitive. I'm really tired of being sensitive. I'm really tired. And you know what it is also? It's like being Black or being proud of your heritage, being proud of your backup, like your background. So whether you're Black, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're Brazilian, whatever colored but background you have, and you show pride in it, oh, you're racist. You
Right.
automatically hate white people. You automatically are just so against the Karens in the house. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like, how can I get more attention on me? And I guess Karen's the latest ploy, but it's again, it's like really, come on, like we don't. Yeah, Karen. Karen isn't something that I think too many people are concerned about as far as inequities go in the United States. I mean, maybe some white people feel like they're being treated inequitably by being called Karen or being treated in a racist manner. But again, it goes back to one of those things like can you oppress the oppressor? Can you be racist towards the race that has propagated the institutions that have ultimately, allowed them to maintain power? And it's just like you can't do these things. So, yeah, I'm personally like, I I listen to these things, I see it on social media and everything, but it's just one of those latest things that causes you just to sort of like, you know, roll your eyes and just be like, scroll past it, and it's just like, all right, whatever. I'm not gonna give it too much of my time because it's not worth it.
I think
Yeah.
also, and this may sound more insensitive, but now there's this fear that is surrounding apparently the Asian community because of the latest, statements Donald Trump has said about the virus, calling it the Chinese virus. Oh, it's from China. It's from China. And now there's this term of like, oh, well, coughing while Asian, sneezing while Asian. People are now maybe hesitant to buy Chinese food or go or stroll through Chinatown. And I'm also wondering, because I think about like just the people of color in America and how many times Black people are the ones taking up the plight of other groups of color, and yet I can't recall a time when Asians have done that. I
Mm-hmm.
can't recall a time when Sue Lee said to me, "I stand with you."
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I'm insensitive to them feeling upset about the virus being called Chinese virus by some people or whatever. I just feel like I don't care enough to fight this fight with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah, I think I no, and I think there's an important just the whole situation we're going through is so unique. Like it's really something that we as modern day humans that have all this technology that have lived our life the way we've lived it compared to previous generations, our lives have been so different. And what I'm trying to get at is the moment we're living in is so unique and weird and special and confusing and all these different things that I think there's so many things that we can really capitalize on. For example, I mean, I agree. I think you have a great point in bringing up the fact that there there aren't many things that you could point to, that you could use to say, look, the Asian community has stood by the African American community, by the Latino community, by the LGBT community, whatever the case may be, and they're vocal, they're out there fighting the fight with us. And it's not to say that there aren't examples, but I would agree with you in that, it's not necessarily something you hear about. But I think that, like, with many um, situations or scenarios where you try and find sort of like where you can capitalize on making something out of uh, what you're given, and in this case, it's just this coronavirus situation, is hopefully having and shedding a light for the Asian community that this is something that the African American community in particular deals with on a hour to hour basis, on a day by day basis, on a week by week basis, on a month by month, year by year basis. This is something that isn't new to us. This racism, this despicable treatment by human by human beings that's perpetrated on your fellow human beings, like, this is real. And now the Asian community really is at the forefront of receiving this disrespect, this just utter racist and unacceptable treatment. And so I think that you have a point, but I think that there's so much good that could come from this, because ultimately, the fight is going to be won with the minority groups, hand in hand, showing up to the booths come November, and putting forth proposals that are going to make sure that shit like this isn't something that's prevalent, and it's something that is rare more so than prevalent. But yeah, this whole thing has really shed a light on the racist treatment of Asians, and I hope that the Asian community sees how it is that African Americans and Latinos and the LGBT community, how we're treated very, very frequently. And that's not to say that before this there wasn't any sort of like racism against Asians, because of course we all know the racist gestures of pulling your eyes to do the Asian eye racist gesture. Of course, there's been racism against Asians. There's plenty of examples in history, but I think that this is one of those situations where um, there is a an initiative by the community as a whole to stand next to those of us who are oppressed. And honestly, say enough is enough. Like this is absolutely ridiculous. This is something that can't happen. I mean, at this point, if we have to start instituting or expand the hate laws in America, why not? To do away with some of this racist behavior. Why not? Like, what are we waiting for?
Right. And I think this time also speaks to the tone deaf that many people, or in particular, many celebrities have during this time. So I recently read that Ellen DeGeneres, and for those, everyone knows she's a host, she's a comedian, but she's known for her talk show, her daytime talk show, and she is in isolation just as everyone else is. And she said a comment. I don't know if it was a joke, and she is a comedian by trade, right? But she said a comment recently saying that she's comparing her isolation. She's saying it feels like she's in jail. She feels like she's in prison right now. She feels like this is a day in jail, a week in jail, a month in jail. She's in jail. And I'm just thinking about, like, well, she lives in the hills of Los Angeles in her big ass
Mhm.
mansion, and in a state, okay, in a big ass real estate land that she's comparing to jail. And she's not the only celebrity who is showing a tone deafness during this time. I also think about the celebrities who decided to sing along the song of Imagine All the People, that song.
Mhm. Mhm.
It was like this viral video of different celebrities coming in, giving their cover on the song. And there's a part in the song, if people don't know, when they say, like, giving up your possessions. Imagine we give up all of our possessions. And just imagine celebrities really doing that. Imagine celebrities really meaning that. And it's like, y'all are just full of shit. Can y'all just shut the fuck up, please? Our lives are not the same. Like, we don't have the same strife. Like, I would love to be locked up in an LA mansion. Like,
Oh yeah.
what? And who, how dare you? Like, I know people in prison. I know people in prison who would love to be locked up in LA mansions. Like, this is not,
Yeah.
this is a joke.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I think, and I'm I'm actually kind of I'm glad you bring that up, because I think that so it's weird, because like during times like these, right, where you are at home, or somewhere that maybe not your home, but you're stuck in for an extended amount of period of time. They say that, oh, you need humor to be able to get through times like these so that you don't go crazy, right? But I think there's a fine line too. Like I understand humor. I understand the need for humor, because of course, like we want to stay sane. You know, we want to laugh. You know, they say laughter is a cure for many things. And but then again, I also think that, you know, when you're an adult and you're a privileged adult and you have what you have, and, or in this case, you're a celebrity and you're doing well for yourself, and you make comments like that, you know, it's like I don't know if we should really give people sort of like a slide, or if we should sort of just give them like, you know, a freebie because they're a celebrity or because they're a comedian. Like, no, that's not okay. You know, like you're not I'm kind of almost willing to bet she's probably never been to prison. And there are also thousands of prisoners that are, if not, you know, affected already by the coronavirus because they may have it, maybe in the next few months. But there are also prisoners already that have passed away from this, you know, and some of these prisoners passed away not because they were in there for in prison for committing a murder, but and this is a point you brought up a few days ago while we were on one of our conference calls during our professional development with teaching. Um, they're they're there because they can't pay the 10% on whatever their bond may be, you know. So it's like to what extent can we give celebrities or people of privilege, you know, sort of like loose reins on jokes like these? Yeah, even in times like these, I don't think that the situation calls for jokes like that. It's just not right. You know, it's not okay. Um, and the reality is, if we're going to be brutally honest, the majority of the incarcerated population is African American, right? So like, how much of those, how much of, or how much are celebrities thinking about that, you know, when making comments like those? I don't think they're thinking about that at all, if they're going to make a joke about it. So yeah, we're in our homes, you know, and if you're in your Beverly Hills mansion, great, like you're enjoying it maybe a little bit more than some of us, because heck, I'm in my 400 square feet little studio and I love it. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's no Beverly Hills mansion like Ellen's. So yeah, I don't know. It's crazy how some of these comments are being made and people are just like, oh, it's just a joke.
Right. And then I wonder, like, because I love jokes. I love comedians. I love comedy. I am the first one to crack a joke out of like in the most inappropriate times. Like, oh shit, maybe it was too soon. But then it's like, with Ellen, I didn't see a clip of her saying this. I don't know if it was like said in a jokey manner. I don't know if she was really making a point. Like maybe she was really making a comparison. And to that, that's what I'm commenting on. So like if she was joking, then I have a soft spot for comedy. So okay, there's a joke.
Yeah,
I'll give it that green light for me. But if I read it in like a statement type of situation. So I don't know if she said it in a statement, but I'm just giving my comments based off of her saying it in a statement that's matter of fact, that's very declarative, as if she really believes
yeah.
her being isolated in her LA mansion is comparable to being in prison. You know, I just this is laughable. Like, girl, and it's one thing to be like, say if it wasn't Ellen who said it, say if it was a person of color, a man, maybe someone who was already in prison, maybe, but being that she's a white woman doing it, it's just like, ooh,
Yeah,
try
yeah,
again.
for sure. Yeah, I'm with you. I agree with you.
Try again. So I know you may have heard the news,
Uh-oh.
but I don't know if I don't think it was clear to me what position you're in. And I'm not interested in like pulling it out of you because I feel like it's everyone's personal business. But Bernie has suspended his campaign.
Yeah.
And I'm crushed. Like, nigga, what? Like, I'm crushed.
Yeah, yeah, that was news to me this this morning when I saw that. Sorry, I don't know if you just heard my dog growling,
I
but that was
did. He's hungry.
yeah, you know, I
Like
was
Mora,
really
I'm crushed,
no,
Mora.
no,
Like
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah.
I feel like what I don't see hope anymore. And I feel like and I don't think I'm being dramatic. I know it could sound dramatic to some people, but I'm saying that primarily because I think plenty of people who are supporting Biden, I'm not saying everybody, but many people who are supporting Biden are doing it out of fear and familiarity. I feel like I always struggle with that word, but they're used to that. They're used to him. They're used to him being, oh, we know him as, VP of Obama. He's like this
Mhm.
nice, his Uncle Joe. And although he had this aesthetic that was very warm and inviting during the Obama administration, I just it's not translating the same years later. He's not the same Biden. And I feel like also that's not enough. Like, okay, I don't care if you're warm and inviting. Yes, I want you to be professional enough to know how to speak to people in conferences, unlike Trump, right? Yes, I want you to be able to speak to the fellow nations, ambassadors, kings, queens, or whatever, respectfully with professionalism. But I don't really care about that. I want to know if can you really sit in the grounds for people? Can you really support them and be radical for that? And I don't like
Mhm.
the word radical either because it's like me giving healthcare for everyone is shouldn't be considered radical. Nigga, like everyone should have healthcare. Like that shouldn't even be a debate. So
Right.
now that he's out the race, I just feel like what can Biden really offer? And maybe I just got to refresh my memory on what he said he'll offer. But because he's not as vocal as Bernie, I just don't feel that energy that shows he's really for the people. He's going to fight tooth and nail, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm with you. And so when it came down to Bernie versus Biden a few weeks ago, and the field had narrowed down to two, I mean, I was Bernie all day and night, every day of the week and twice on Sunday over Biden. Um, and ultimately, it was the proposals that Bernie was putting forth that, I was like, yep, I'm with that, and I agree with you. Like, really, we're saying healthcare for all is radical, like that's some crazy idea. When it's really not, it's something that is not crazy at all. What I will say though is politics is how do I say this? It's nitty gritty and it can get dirty. And where I'm trying to go with that is that when Bernie dropped out, I don't think it was just one of those things where I really don't, where Bernie just said, all right, that's it. I'm putting out a statement. I'm out. There had to have been negotiations with the Biden campaign. I mean, if you remember the last election, when it was Hillary and Bernie, Bernie's pretty much went up until the convention. And obviously, we're in a different territory now, but there had to have been some sort of agreements made between the Bernie and Biden camp. And so I'll say this: I do think that Bernie, his camp, conversations with Biden's camp, of course, and I think that some of those conversations were pretty cutthroat. Like, look, we'll drop out now. We'll drop out now if your camp, if the Biden camp can agree to certain things that are incredibly important that speak to our base, because ultimately it's incredibly important to remember that it's not over. Biden not only has to still campaign and hold his base, now he's got to put in extra work to start bringing people over from Bernie's base over to him, and hopefully he can pull some you know Republicans, because numbers are going to matter. That's just it's just the reality, right? Like, numbers matter. The turnout is going to matter. The number of people who vote are going to matter. So I do think that the Biden camp is going to be working overtime to make sure that the message that they're putting out there resonates to some of Bernie's base. I
They
say
need to
some
work
because,
overtime to keep him awake.
well, yeah, I
That's
mean,
what they need to do.
I
Keep him
mean, yeah,
awake.
He's old, but I will say I would take Bernie or Biden. Obviously now it's just Biden, but I'll take Biden over Trump. Uh, you know, a thousand times. So it's kind it really does suck because you're in a situation where you feel like, well, like what alternative do you have? You know, in a democracy, um, it comes down to two people. Like, really? That's how it works? You know, like that's what democracy is. And I don't know. I think that modern day society, modern day American society, has convoluted the term democracy so much that we just, you know, we tend to live on a day by day basis, grinding it out, you know, making our paycheck, not too concerned with what's going on in society, and we forget that this isn't how democracy works, you know. But it's what it's become, and it's ugly. But I'm hoping that the Biden campaign honestly agrees with some of the platforms that Bernie's camp has been campaigning on, and starts pounding on it and holds to it, and hopefully, you know, after November they put some of those proposals in play, and I say that hoping that there'll be a Democratic president, because man, the Republicans are just they're I don't know, they're unscrupulous at this point. You know, they're doing whatever they can to hold power now, and so we have to be very vigilant and careful. And I don't usually say those things, so I do say that with like the most seriousness, because I do think we're going to see some things coming up in the next few months that, you know, are going to like sort of maybe gut punch us, and we're going to be like, whoa, really, like that's happening? I mean, like, just for example, very quickly, you know, the Supreme Court essentially saying, hey, it's okay for states to have, you know, their primaries during the middle of a pandemic, and no, you can't extend the day so that people could mail in their ballot instead.
Right,
It's like, whoa, what?
right.
Like, what, you know,
What's
what is
happening?
happening? Like, that is insane. uh it's crazy. And apparently someone whom I saw on Twitter, you know, they read the brief, and they said that the word COVID-19 or coronavirus wasn't even mentioned until the last paragraph in the decision by the Supreme Court. So yeah, we got to get ready for what's going to come in the next few months. I think it's going to be crazy.
I just need to understand one thing. How come Trump didn't test positive when he was in close contact with, I think, two people who was positive for coronavirus? Yet he's suddenly not. Like, what is it that what type of invisible shield does he have on that he's suddenly inept from this disease? And I'm not saying I wish this virus on anybody. I'm not like that. But I just think it's very interesting. I. I don't want to say I'm a conspiracy theorist, but sometimes I can be, and I could go down a rabbit hole on YouTube like, oh, this is interesting. But the latest conspiracy was, it might not even be the latest one because there's always a new one coming up. But one of the ones that I've heard was that the coronavirus came from 5G in our phone. So like our iPhone, if it's
Mm,
connected to 5G, which I'm still trying to figure out what's the difference between 3G and 5G. And if you
right.
know, please enlighten me. But like apparently the radar, the waves could somehow get, like, how does that even come about? What is that? Now some people are subscribing to it. Like, have you heard
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, yeah. No, I have. I've definitely heard it. I think one of our natural tendencies as humans is to try and find answers to questions that are being posed that we are very curious about. And when we do that, like we have this natural tendency to try and like, or I don't know, like the answers that are interesting, such as conspiracy theories, because they tend to provide answers to some questions that, you know, we have. Um, I think it's very easy for us to get caught up in conspiracy theories because, to be fair, like hell, some of these conspiracy theories make sense. Like, I'm not gonna lie, you know, as far as like what they put forth, you know. But ultimately, I think we just have to rely on the science, you know. And when we think about what viruses are and what pandemics are, you know, I think this is something that has been studied in the past. Obviously, we've had different pandemics with different strains or what have you, and they're all different. And I think, again, I think as humans, we have a natural tendency to try and find answers to questions, and ultimately, a lot of times, conspiracy theories provide very interesting answers that will just hold your attention because you're like, oh shit, all right, what's 5G? Okay, what does this do? What does that do? But I
Find out
think
on the next YouTube video. Like,
right, yeah, yeah. And by the way, you said it. You said you wouldn't wish the coronavirus on anyone or Trump. Should I say it? I would wish the coronavirus on Trump. He's he's ultimately he's an authoritarian. If there were if there wasn't anything in place to tame him, such as Congress or in some cases inspector generals and different bureaucratic agencies, I absolutely think he would be doing things that are definitely illegal and that he could get away with had these things not been in place, had Congress not or if Congress wasn't practicing oversight. But since there are inspector generals, since there is Congress, and he's already been impeached once, and obviously last time, the threat of him getting impeached twice was something that was, circulating. Yeah, he's an authoritarian, and I definitely wish this upon him because he's brought more harm to this country. He's brought more harm to our communities than good. And so you know what? Fuck him.
that shit.
I'll say it.
Okay, I respect it. I get it. I get it. I also, because I've said this a couple of times, like on my Instagram and on my podcast, where although I obviously do not condone and do not like subscribe to what with anything that Trump says, and what I could also say to that is, oftentimes what I see from the left is, don't you see how racist he is? Don't you see how misogynistic and sexist he is? And all these things that are true to his horrible character, right? Like, we can't deny that. But I just also realize that America doesn't give a fuck. Like, you have me and you who do care about stuff like that, who do account to that as someone's lack of leadership, and that should be accounted for as a whole. But there are so many other Americans who don't care about that, and that's how he was able to make it as far as he did, because he appealed to the white trash, the people who felt like they were forgotten, the people who felt like their jobs were taken by immigrants, or like all of those things. And they don't like the whole argument of him being a racist and him being a sexist and misogynist and even a rapist, okay,
Mm-hmm.
allegedly. All of that still wasn't and isn't enough. And I'm wondering, I mean, now that we've had 4 years with him, I'm wondering if that's going to now be enough for the new voters, but I can't hold my breath to that, because I feel like when you talk about racism, like if someone's a racist, you're a racist, you're a racist, it's like there's okay, like what I I feel like this is this defeatist feeling when it comes to realizing someone's a racist, because naturally for me, I just believe like you just can't change. That's just in your nature. You're just gonna be a racist and die a racist. You may be maybe open to, I don't even think even being open, but I just feel like some people just have these rigid ideas and biases against certain people that's just is what it is. It's a uphill battle. Why are we, what else?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that politicians will try and like create a message around essentially what they will hope their presidency or their political career will look like, and Trump's fear, and his presidential bid started off with instilling fear in his base, and that fear that he was going to instill was going to be around immigrants, undocumented immigrants. And what we're seeing now is Trump not necessarily being able to capitalize like he has in the past on that fear, because there aren't rallies that are taking place, right? There aren't rallies in the middle of Tennessee or in the middle of Kentucky or someplace in, you know, rural Oklahoma where his base would show up and clap and cheer to all that crap. But what we do see is him, and that's actually interesting. Something that I notice is we see him having these daily press briefings, and up until a few days ago, he was constantly calling the coronavirus the Chinese virus, and it was pointed out by someone that and he acknowledged it himself that he had a call with um, the Chinese leader. Can't remember his name. It's escaping me right now. But after that call, he hasn't called the coronavirus the Chinese virus anymore. And so there's a lot there that we could also spend time and deconstruct. But his whole scheme is having or ultimately having a message that's going to instill fear in his base to have them come out and vote for him and vote for his racist message, which it just proves that there's still obviously a lot of racist people out there.
There was a reason why, I think he said it himself, or maybe someone in his team said it, why he decided to use Chinese virus for the time that he did. I didn't realize he stopped, but yeah, I do actually, I can recall that he hasn't used it recently, but he started using it because apparently the Chinese government, the administration in China blamed the US troops for having coronavirus and blame us in our army, our team to have contracted and spread the virus to China. So
Mm-hmm.
Trump's Trump's use of China virus was to, kind of turn around the blame. And I do believe that the virus started in Wuhan, China. That is what's on record. So, but him using that was to refocus us to remember and realize that this started in China. That's what I'm saying. Chinese virus. It's in China. It's a Chinese virus. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so funny. But anyway, that's what he said. I mean, yes, it's like racist, whatever. But I just, like I said, I just do not. I don't care enough to care about the plight.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like, okay, cool. Asians want to speak up and speak out for it. Do it. Like, that's great. Use your voice, your God-given voice. But I'll sit right here.
Yeah. No, again, yeah, I see your point. I do. I definitely do. Um, but I think, and this is where leadership is super important. If we had that leader which could, bring communities together, um, someone like Obama was able to do, bring everybody together and be pretty explicit about what's going on as far as the racism, put it out there, make sure that there aren't any questions as far as what we're talking about, and be able to unite communities. That would be amazing. Unfortunately, I don't know if we have a leader right now in politics that can do that, and bring communities together and say, look, now you're seeing what the African American community goes through, like I said, on a day-to-day basis, and you're really seeing it in an ugly manner because people are cursing you out. People are looking at you crazy just for coughing and being Asian. And like it's like, all right, now you see what it's like to feel that way. Now imagine if you were black, right, and you couldn't do anything to change the color of your skin because it's the color of the skin that you are, and you're okay with it, but society isn't. Like what the fuck is wrong with that? Like that's where a leader could bring in the communities together and fight the fight. But yeah, it's tough. There isn't a leader to do that, and so I, hopefully the Asian community realizes this, and like I said, hopefully the community rallies and understands. Hey, there's a bigger fight here. It's not just gonna be once the coronavirus is over and people aren't scared of people coughing anymore, we'll be all right. Like, no, like at any point, you have to realize that someone could say things or do things to instill fear in others against your people, and then it's a whole different ball game. Then it's like, oh shit, like I'm being treated differently. This doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel good. And it's just like, okay, good. I'm glad your eyes are open now. So like, let's wake the fuck up and let's get it together, because they're not going to go anywhere. The oppression is going to continue. The white supremacy is going to continue to be perpetuated. And I think ultimately the way to defeat white supremacy will be having the oppressed, the minority groups, those groups come together and realize, hey, yeah, it's going to be a group effort. Ultimately, us who are considered the minority have to rise up as the majority, because that's really where it's going to be at. Like you no longer have the power. It's going to be now this new majority that we talk about, which is already the majority. I just don't, again, like the systems of power are going to do their best to keep that from us, to have us believe that, yeah, you're still a minority. You have no power. You still have no power. It's going to be years before you have power, if that. So it's hopefully, I don't know. I think Julian Castro was going to be that candidate, to be able to do that, but he's a brown man in America who I do think that the media had a role in this. Didn't get the time. He was speaking about issues that people were like, "Ooh, maybe that's a little too controversial." Well, you know what? It is controversial, but it's the fucking truth.
Right. Right.
So
Period.
period. Yeah.
There is apparently, where is it? So apparently there's this report that more Black communities are being hit harder by coronavirus, particularly in Michigan. And I mean, it has a lot to do with, obviously, their population is it 70% Black? Like, there's more Black people in Michigan, but the underlying issue is the underlying medical conditions of Black people, of many Black people, not all, but many Black people in America. And that's due to the lack of access to healthy resources, the lack of access to having money to buy, healthier foods, and the convenience of getting food that's not healthy, like fast food, all the time, all the time, all the time. So then I'm wondering, like, where, like, there was this argument that I stumbled upon of like, oh, well, you know, Black people should take more responsibility of their health. Like, if Big Mama got, a big toe, or her legs are fatter than usual, that's because she's, eating too much sugar. She's consuming too much sugar. And although that could be true, there's also a bigger argument here that this is more about the system as a whole. It's not about this particular Black family who needs to, tie down their cholesterol. Let's talk about the lack of money and the resources and just the education on what good eating, healthy eating is. I don't know if you've ever watched a show called The Real, which is another like talk show, like a young adult, fun, flighty talk show that's on Fox, I believe. And they hit a lot of harder topics lately, ever since Amanda Seales has been on the show consistently as a co-host. And Lonnie Love, who's a co-host on the show, she said how she's starting to take her health more seriously now. She's starting to take control of her weight, and she's a full-fledged, big-boned Black woman. She's a pretty beautiful woman, but she said that she never knew how to eat well. She never knew how, like, what to eat and what not to eat. She just ate to survive. She said growing up in the projects, she had to just figure out what's in the cupboards, what can she afford down the block. And down the block is always a wing stop. Well, not wing stop back then, but just a wing ding dinner,
Mm-hmm.
or a McDonald's. And there's no education given to her at that time and to many other Black people and many other people of color in general who, you know, weren't given the opportunity to learn about health, to learn about healthy eating. And so when I read this report about Michigan and Black communities being hit harder by coronavirus, I don't want the people to confuse that coronavirus is specifically targeting Black people. Like, that's not where the focus is. It's focused on the fact that people who are at a higher risk. Why are Black people are at higher risk? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I think there was talks of this early on by people whom do a lot of work with the most marginalized communities here in America, and I don't think there was any doubt that this was gonna hit our most marginalized communities particularly hard, because the reality is many of our families, many of our communities, they rely on that minimum wage paying job to put food on the table, to pay rent, to pay the electricity bills. Every now and then, if there's a spare dollar, to give your child a spare dollar so that they can buy, I don't know, a bag of hot Cheetos at school or whatever the case may be. And so, and with that, one of the things that I was most discouraged about with what the government response has been, was in this last stimulus package that was passed. Only one paycheck was agreed to by both parties, to be sent out, and the minimum is at $1,200 that you would receive, but it would increase depending on the number of children that you have and whether you're married or not, so on and so forth. But like, are we being serious? Like, the fuck is $1,200 gonna do? Are you kidding me? Not only that, like, where is it? Like, how long is it gonna be until I see those $1,200? Like, it's, I'll tell you that, I'll tell you this right now. I checked my bank account yesterday. It's not in there right now.
Right.
It was the first of the month 8 days ago. So for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of families, this paycheck was needed 8 days ago. Like, and where is it? It's not.
And
It's not in
landlords don't give a fuck. Like, can we just talk about that? And it's one thing to have a landlord who, maybe you knew him or her, as you were growing up in your childhood and you guys were able to sort out a deal, or, maybe this landlord was like a family friend of a friend and you guys were able to come to an understanding. But when you have a landlord who is not someone of direct contact, if you live in a huge apartment complex, they're not. I got an email the other day, and I thank God, and I'm super grateful, but I am also speaking for the people who aren't privileged like me and like us. Like, I'm thankful that, we have positions, that we have salary positions, we are taken care of, thank the Lord. But then I just think about, like, just the mere principle of me living in a huge apartment complex. I got an email the other day, not the other day, but like during the time when April 1st was coming up. Rent is still due. You will pay this in full. Please use these methods to pay. And that's it. There was no, actually, they started probably the first two sentences like, oh, we understand the times that we are in, but please be advised, rent is still due. Like, first of all, when you use but, as we all should know, it contradicts everything said prior. So you don't give a fuck about the times that we're living. Like, you know what I mean? Like, capitalism still exists. It is still rising to the top in the midst of this obvious chaos that so many Americans, so many people in the world are living in. It hurts my soul because I am an empath sometimes, and I feel for people who don't have this privilege.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, capitalism is a beast in and of its own. And on the note about rent being due and everything, I'm lucky in that my dad's my my what's the word I'm thinking about that I just blanked on?
Landlord?
He's my landlord. So, I'm like, uh, I mean, it's fine. Like you said, we're lucky to be in a privileged position to be salaried and everything. But yeah, you also hear about some landlords kicking out or attempting to kick out, those who are working in the medical field because of their fears of doctors or nurses having the coronavirus. I'm not sure if you've seen, Twitter uh, feeds of people in the healthcare industry sharing how landlords are attempting to evict them because they're scared that they may have the coronavirus or what have you. But um, yeah, if even if we look at examples from other countries, I mean, you've had some countries that have said, hey, for the next 2 months or for the next month, we're suspending any mortgages, we're suspending any rents that may be due. I think some countries went as far as to suspend any credit payments that you may have, pretty much just essentially putting the country on pause. And that's not what America has done by any means, like at all. I mean, in fact, some of the states are saying that one of the things that the Trump administration is doing, which again goes directly back to capitalism and how unfettered it is, and honestly, right now it's a little disgusting. One of the things that the Trump administration is doing is the administration is getting a hold of PPE, whether it be masks, gloves, just different medical attire, so that doctors can protect themselves. And they're bringing the equipment in, but then what they're doing is once they have acquired that equipment, they're giving it to the private companies. And so what states end up having to do is, and I'm not sure if you've heard about this, but now more governors are putting it out there because it's a little fucking ridiculous, to be honest. They're having to go and essentially bid for these different PPE, and they're bidding against each other and just driving the price up. And before like we even get into that, like, why the fuck is the government acquiring PPE and then giving it to private companies to sell off? Like, hold the fuck up. Like, what? Like, how are we not like? This is what I don't get about Americans, and I guess it starts with me. Like, maybe I should be the one man show doing this, but how the fuck are we not all in the streets right now? Obviously, because of the coronavirus, right? Don't go
Right,
out in
right,
the
right.
streets.
But I get what you
you
mean. I want to flip
it's like,
the table.
you
Flip a
know
table.
what? Like, fuck it. Like, let's just all put on like our fucking our
Fuck this
masks.
shit.
Everybody put on some gloves and put on
Right.
some chem goggles, some chem class goggles, some scientific goggles, and let's go out and fucking protest because this is ridiculous. Like, it really is. How is the federal government acquiring the gear that everyone needs, and states are having to bid against it? And I know I went off on a tangent there, so I
No,
want to
you
bring it back.
good.
But yeah, I do see, and I think that um, this is something that people need to be up in arms about, and the fact that we're not shedding a light on how our most marginalized communities are being affected, or at least not enough of a light. We need more attention in our communities, and how I've seen some cameras go into hospitals, some nice hospitals, that are being shown on CNN and MSNBC. All right, now let's get one of those. Let's get one of those cameras in one of our communities in our hospitals to see what that's like. Like, are we going to do that, or are we just going to play footsies here? What are we doing?
And why are there tests given to celebrities more so than there even being tests being available for the common civilian? Like,
Yeah,
if
don't
I
even
hear
get me
one
started
more
with that.
time that Andy Cohen got coronavirus, like I don't. But another thing people are up in arms about is a lot of some people may call it radical Christians or just some Christians, period, would still congregate at church, would still
Hmm.
decide to worship together collectively at a building, and they call this church, right? So Here's the thing. I'm conflicted at this because I see it as, we live in America, right? We want to have freedom or we're given the right to have freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And now that freedom is essentially violated, with this
Mhm.
virus. But then there is apparently a fine that will be given to anyone who violate the social distancing rules. So according to what Andrew Cuomo, who's the governor of New York,
Mhm.
said, or what he tweeted recently, is that he's going to increase the fine from $500 to $1,000. And this is to hopefully decrease anyone's attempt to violate state mandated social distancing rules and to increase people being at home, staying at home. So this brings me back to just, there was this clip I saw on Instagram of this woman being interviewed, but she was in her car. She was just leaving service. And she said to the reporter who pulled her over and said, why are you still going to church? This is a
Mhm.
coronavirus. Aren't you afraid that you could be contracting it or spreading it? And she said, I got the blood of Jesus. The blood of Jesus covers me.
Mhm.
It fights against this virus. The blood of Jesus is enough. And I just want to know one thing. Can the blood of Jesus pay my rent? Can the
I
blood of Jesus, I don't know, add 2,000 to the 1,200 in my account for the stimulus
right,
package? And
right.
I'm a believer. I do love the Lord. Don't get me wrong. My listeners know I do have a relationship with God. I just don't have a relationship with people who don't have common sense sometimes.
Yeah, no, I am with you 100% on that. I've had people actually personally say things to me like that, and I guess my rebuttal or my point is, okay, fair enough. I understand you have faith. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That you are more than you know okay to have your faith, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is completely okay. But again, I think it goes spot on with what you just said. Like, there's common sense. Like, okay, like, yes, God is going to provide for you. God is going to help you out. But God doesn't want you to be stupid either and say, like, this isn't going to happen to me because I believe in God. It's like, no, that's not how the human body works. It's like, I believe in God. I believe in the blood of Jesus. And because of that, I'm going to go into this coronavirus and infested or infested party, and I'm gonna be all right because I believe in God. It's like, no, that's not how it works. It's not how it works at all. It's like that. When people use the story to tell or use the story about how God sent a few signs of help or a few people to help out the person that was stranded on their roof, and in the end, the person that ends up dying, and God says, or he asks, the person who died asks God, hey, why didn't you help me? And it's like, I did. I sent you a fireman, I sent you a helicopter, I sent you all these things, and you said no. And it's just like, uh, someone needs to tell the preachers who are still holding, these masses, like, no, sir, you've had plenty of scientists, those are your firemen, those are your helicopters that are being sent by God to tell you stop. And again, I think one of the beauties is you see uh, plenty of churches that have stopped, but that doesn't mean that they stop giving their sermon. They're now given their sermon or their mass via video, via live video, and the power of technology, right? I mean, if the Pope, if the Pope, whom is the leader of billions of people across the world in the Catholic faith, essentially cancels mass at the Vatican and cancels all types of gatherings for Catholics. Um, like, I'm sure, preacher, I don't even know, John can put off, gathering his community for a few weeks because this is real. This isn't fake. It's not gonna ignore you because you believe in God and in the blood of Jesus. Like, this isn't how these things work. So, I think honestly, I do think that these men aren't stupid, um, whom are, you know, still having these gatherings, these religious gatherings. Um, and I think that there has to be talks of honestly some serious repercussions. I know there was already an arrest warrant sent out for one preacher. So I think people are starting to get the memo, but it's like, guys, we're a few weeks into that. You know, it's like you should have gotten the memo the first week. Maybe you should have probably gotten the memo first day, but you know, it's a few weeks into it. They're starting to find people. They're starting to send out arrest warrants, and I don't know. I mean, I'm curious as to how that's going to hold up if people were to fight it in court, because you know, in America, they can't force a quarantine. There's no power for the government to force a quarantine. So yeah,
Right. And isn't the church, it's not under the rule of the government of the state, right? It's separate, right?
yeah, it is
So,
separate.
mm, you know, have faith, you know. And I also think, so apparently there is a hike now in online dating, in virtual dating, however people want to describe it now, and that's obviously because we can't really congregate anymore. We can't go out and be with each other, so there is a hike in a lot of these apps. I have Okay, so I was on an app before, like probably like the first, I don't know, like right before our spring break, and I'm like, all y'all niggas are corny. I just never mind. Like, never mind. But it did give me the ammo to continue a friendship with with a man. I call him church nigga on my phone, on my podcast, so my listeners know him as that. And I decided to, like, you know what? I really want to continue this friendship with this person and really continue to invite him in my life virtually, obviously. But me and him have been friends for a little while now. And there's a comfort in knowing that there's an establishment of friendship. There's a foundation of friendship present with someone. And I feel like, because in my previous podcast, my listeners would know that I wouldn't say I'm flaky, but here's the thing with me. Like, I'm afraid of being hurt. I'm afraid of putting my heart out there and being open. And so because of that fear, and I'm so reflective that I'm able to recognize this about myself, but because of that fear, I sabotage what could be with some people. Like, I find a reason to walk away. I find a reason to be like, nah, he's corny, never mind, but he's I just feel like with this one, he is amazing. Like, he's a great guy and we get each other. We have a strong friendship, and it's like, why am I finding, or like, I need to stop sabotaging. Instead, I
hmm
want to walk on faith with this person and see where things could go, instead of just immediately putting negativity in my head and just thinking, well, I'm gonna get hurt. Like, no, especially when there's no evidence of that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I, I think that's interesting that you mentioned. I think humans, you know, we're too often we tend not to jump into things because of the negative things that we think could come of whatever it may be that we want to jump into. For example, relationship, and so we won't do those things. And you know, I don't. I guess I don't ever share it at all. But I'm very much the same way. But it's not that I sabotage relationships. I just don't think, I don't know, I don't think that I end up wanting in the end to go through the commitment part.
Mm.
Um, just because in the end, it does come back to, you know, I, I, I don't know. When I do end up with someone, I don't want, you know, I don't want the heartbreak if it doesn't work out, first off. And second off, you know, I don't know what it is. Like, I think I'm too caught up in this, or with this idea of like, there's the perfect one is out there somewhere. And it's just like, sure, you know, that the person that is for you is out there, but by no means are they perfect, you know. And it's like, that's another thing, you know. But that being said, you know, there's still a high bar. I get that people aren't perfect, but there's still some things some qualifications, and that sounds crappy to say. Like there's this checkbox
Nah, it's not.
that people
I
really,
think here's the thing. That's a good point because we also need to hold people to a standard that meets ours. Like, if I'm gonna bring this to the table, what are you bringing? You know what I
yeah.
mean? There's nothing shallow about that. Go ahead, go off.
Hey, you damn right. You know what? Shit, I'll take that back. You're right. You're
Mhm,
exactly right.
mhm,
uh, you know, and now that you say that, I one of the notes that I wrote, my brother, the day he was graduating, which brings me back to this conversation we're having right now, is, we're out. I wrote to him in a note, we are out here as a family trying to build a dynasty. And I want a family, or someone who's going to be with me, who's going to help me build that dynasty. And so, yeah, you're right. There are things that that person that we want to be with is going to have. And if they don't, like, say, I mean, maybe we can hang out, have some fun, go out, drink. But I don't know. I think that there's got to be like an understanding, and I think most of the time there is. It just depends, how mature are the people in the relationship, I guess.
right.
But yeah, great points.
I know. I know. You know what? We're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being on. We gotta do this again.
Yeah, no, this was pretty freaking fun. I'm not gonna lie.
Yay! And you wasn't
Yeah,
nervous at all.
I thought I heard my voice cracking like 25 times, but I guess it didn't.
Oh, this was great. Thank you so much. This was great. And I continue to wish you well. I will see you again virtually since, we are colleagues. So I'll see
Yeah, yeah,
you.
I'll see you, and yeah, it was great catching up with you, and to your listeners, stay safe, stay healthy, and yeah, thanks for inviting me. I had a lot of fun.
Yay. And please, everyone, make sure to wash your hands. And I just need someone to answer this question for me real quick before we log out. Where do we get these masks? Because all of a sudden, I was at an HEB, and I know we're going to wrap up, but I was at an HEB the other day. I made sure to get there early. There was still a line. It went by quickly. Everyone was social distancing, only 25 people at a time inside. But as I was walking towards the line, almost everybody there had a mask on. I'm just like, who were they giving out masks? How do people all of a sudden have these masks on for this time? And then when I go on Amazon, they won't be delivered until June 18th. Like, nigga,
Shit, June 18th, that's plenty of days to catch the virus between now and then.
right, I'll be in quarantining more. Like, I don't know. It's just weird to me. Like, everyone just has a nurse in their family who suddenly have all the masks. Like, this makes no sense.
Oh man, that's funny.
Anyway, let's go ahead and end it. Thank you again. Continue to support this podcast by being a follower on Instagram at God Built This Pod, and leave your review, like, share, subscribe, and support by giving 5 stars. Thank you guys. Peace. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of God Built This Podcast with your host, Maxine. Be sure to leave a review, give me 5 stars, and of course, subscribe. Also, follow God Built This Podcast on Instagram at God Built This Pod. God bless.